with regard to the 10 precepts, or in Mahayana Buddhism, the 16 precepts in the first class, which was held with Reverend Master Oswin and Reverend Valora. So in case anyone wants to look up that video, it's Shasta Abbey, Introduction to Serene Reflection Buddhism number 1, and that was uploaded on August 23rd. Reverend Master Oswin gave a really good introduction to the 3 treasures precepts and the 3 pure precepts. So in Mahayana Buddhism, in our tradition, there's the 16 precepts, the 3 treasures precepts: I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. And there's the 3 pure precepts: to cease from evil, do only good, and do good for others. And so I'm not going to talk about those tonight. If you want to hear an explanation about those, again, that first talk that was done is a good resource for that. So I'm going to talk about the 10, what we call the 10 great precepts, and I'll list them now just in brief, but we're going to look at them each individually. Killing, stealing, abusing sexuality or coveting, lying, abusing intoxicants, or also our tradition translates that as selling the wine of delusion, speaking against others, being proud of yourself and devaluing others, being mean in giving either dharma or wealth, indulging anger, and defaming the 3 treasures. And some general thoughts first before we look at each precept. Again, something we talked about previously is how these are not commandments. They're not God imposed. This isn't God imposing these things upon us. This is an expression of our true nature. This is an expression of how a Buddha would live. This is us, trying to let our Buddha nature, to live from the place of meditation and Buddha nature. So when we break the precepts, it's very self-oriented. As we go through this, I tried to think of some personal examples and just examples in general, and we can see how it's the precepts chop up life into self and other. It's all about me, and there's that out there. So it creates this duality, which in practice we're trying to bring those 2 together. We're trying to close the gap of duality and realize that there is no duality, and how intimately we are all interconnected, which when we really can see that, we see, well, why would I want to hurt people? Why would I want to cause harm? Or how can I do my best not to cause harm? Because we don't want to cause harm. I'm going to read something really quick from what's called the Shishogi. And this is Master Dogen's talking about, the Shishogi is he's talking about the precepts and different aspects of training. And what I want to read specifically is this section on the precepts. Why, what are the precepts? Well, anyway, I'll just read this, and maybe that'll kind of illuminate it. So all the Buddhas have received and carefully preserved the above 3 treasures, the 3 pure collective precepts, and the 10 precepts. If you accept these precepts wholeheartedly, the highest enlightenment will be yours. And this is the undestroyable Buddhahood, which was understood, is understood, and will be understood in the past, present, and future. Is it possible that any truly wise person would refuse the opportunity to attain to such heights? The Buddha has clearly pointed out to all living beings that whenever these precepts are truly accepted, Buddhahood is reached, every person who accepts them becoming the true child of Buddha. Within these precepts dwell the Buddhas, enfolding all things within their unparalleled wisdom. There is no distinction between subject and object for any who dwell herein. All things, earth, trees, wooden posts, bricks, stones, become Buddhas once this refuge is taken. From these precepts come forth such a wind and fire that all are driven into enlightenment when the flames are fanned by the Buddha's influence. This is the merit of non-action and non-seeking, the awakening to true wisdom. So you can see how Master Dogen is, first of all, saying that these precepts, it is the life of the Buddhas. The subject and object, there is no distinction between subject and object for any who dwell herein. Again, because when we break the precepts, we're doing things from a very selfish point of view, and there's usually an object that is the brunt of our wrong action or wrong speech or wrong thoughts. Also, as I reflected on these, I was struck by how much the precepts are in a web. Each one is bound to the others. If you break one precept, it will often quickly lead to breaking other precepts, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Some masters will talk about the one precept. When we study the precepts really deeply, I think we see that it really comes down to putting them in a category of 10 is helpful. You could make as many as you wanted. The refinement, it just gets more and more refined. But really, it's the one precept trying to live from Buddha nature, trying to live in harmony with our Buddha nature. And finally, the precepts, so we have the ability to do harm or to do good through our body, speech, and mind. That's how we interact with the world. So these precepts all have different aspects. Some of them, to me, seem to be very action-oriented, body-oriented. Some of them tend to be very speech-oriented. Some of them tend to be very mind-oriented. And yet each one, you could find ways of putting it in those different categories and how they have their kind of coarse aspects and their subtler aspects. And again, since these are not commandments, it's that you'll usually see them as do not kill, do not steal. And I think we may have mentioned this in a previous session, but one way to word this is I undertake the training to refrain from. So I undertake the training to refrain from killing. I undertake the training to refrain from stealing. This is something that we're trying in our life not to do, and yet recognizing that we're human and we make mistakes, and we can always get back up and keep going. it's not a sin, again, from as something is being imposed upon us. It's that we are the creators of our own karma, and we will have to take the consequences of our actions. So killing, obviously, in its coarsest sense, is going to be murder. And I was finding it kind of hard, how do I formulate this? Because I don't think I'm talking to any serial killers. And so human murder may not be seem realistic to us. So I was trying to think of, how are we going to encounter killing in our daily life? And when you start to look at it, actually, you can find many ways that we might encounter killing in our daily life. To me, one of the big examples is bugs and insects. If there's a spider in our room, do we kill it? Or can we catch it and release it outside? That being is a being just like us. All beings value their lives just as much as I value my life. So even though I don't want this spider in my room, it doesn't deserve to die because it's in my room. I can remember when I first became a monk, I was talking with my sister, and she told me a story about how there was this spider and my mom was going to kill it. And my sister said, whoa, mom, we have a monk in our family. We cannot just kill this spider. Like, we just can't do that. We can't do that. We can do better than that. And so they worked together to get it and take it outside. And when she told me that, I was really like, oh, good for you. I was really grateful that, like, in whatever way, I could help, and I was really proud of them to take the time, because it's that kind of care with beings. One thing that I have to really be careful about, ants at the Abbey will fall into the toilets because they're going for the water. And if we're going to use the toilet, if you're in a mad rush, if you don't take the time to look, often here, at least I find there's an ant drowning in the toilet. And can I take the time to help that ant out of the toilet? Can I save that being from drowning? Is my day and my life so busy that I can't take a moment to help? That's just one way that I encounter, not that I'm necessarily killing it, but at a point when I encounter that, there becomes a point where, I enter into the equation and I have to make a choice. And in one sense, this being's life is in my hands. I was talking to my teacher, Reverend Master Oswin, about killing and how else to talk about it, and he was pointing out to me some of the subtler things to consider. Now these are the subtler aspects. How we can kill someone's joy, we can kill an opportunity, we could kill a relationship. I can think of, at least one relationship I had when I was a layperson, and it was just kind of imploding in upon itself to such a point that, you could definitely look at it from the point of view of, I killed that relationship. I just stopped trying. And I think in those kinds of ways, when we look at killing in that subtle realm, we can see ways that we are doing harm by our negligence. I don't think we usually are intending to, do these things. And so we just have to take care. Stealing. So again, in its coarsest sense, this is going to be stealing material items. Things that are not offered or offered freely can be how that precept starts to move into the subtle realm. My own personal example for this is food in the kitchen. So now I don't have a problem taking the food, taking food that's not offered in the kitchen. But when I watch my mind, I can definitely see what food I want. On snack days, sometimes we'll have snack carts set out, and that's the food that's being offered. And sometimes you go in, and, or at least I go in, and I think, well, I don't really want any of that. But those burgers that we had the other day that are sitting there, those look pretty nice, or, vegetarian burgers. And I'll just say quickly back to one of the general ideas I was saying about the me and the them, how it's like, what do I want? I want life to conform around what I want. So here I'm looking at, again, in my example, the food. I don't want any of this. So I want to take something else. And if we take that extra step, then that's stealing, at least, for us. So we just have to take care with seeing what's not offered and how we can grab onto things in that way, which leads into number 3, which traditionally is a precept about sexuality, about abusing sexuality. But Reverend Master Jiyu translated it as covet. And so within the realm of sexuality, there is the coarse elements, rape and adultery. So we want to take care with sexuality. And coveting, to continue with that example from stealing, well, if I'm coveting this food that I want, is then the next step going to be to take then what isn't mine or isn't being offered? So I think that's why I can't think of a time that I've ever been present when this precept coveting has been talked about. I mean, I'm sure I have, but nothing's coming to mind. But I wonder if that's why Reverend Master Jiyu translated it as coveting, because you could just make it a precept about abusing sexuality, but really what is more helpful is to look at the coveting itself. In the case of adultery, I'm, my neighbor's wife, it probably starts out as kind of lusting thoughts, and then, it can move into action. So it kind of starts with this covetous mind and then becomes, abusing sexuality. The fourth one, lying, unfortunately, I have a lot of experience with. When I was growing up, I was terrible about lying. I just didn't see the harm in it. And when reflecting on this, about my experience with it, I could see that really what I was trying to do was I was trying to force reality to meet my wants. I wanted reality to be how I wanted it to be. And so I wouldn't have any problem telling an outright lie in order to get what I wanted. Our tradition, also Reverend Master Jiyu, I think, is probably credited with this, that this precept for us is usually translated as, oh no, I'm sorry, that's the next one. What am I trying to say here? lying. So lying to ourselves, how we can tell ourselves a lie and try to convince us so much of that we begin to try and convince others of that lie. And Reverend Master Jiyu translates the next precept is selling the wine of delusion. So it's interesting how this number 4 can kind of morph into number 5. But our lie becomes our truth. We try to make it our reality. A story about myself: when I was younger, I moved to a different school, and in an effort to get the other kids to like me, I told a lie about the previous school that I had come from. And I told this kind of really exaggerated lie about how I had snuck down into this boiler room and messed with all these shower knobs and was turning the water hot and cold and, on the people who were taking the showers. And it's funny, the lie just got more and more out of my control. Eventually, my group of friends from the new school and the old school met up. So I had to tell my friends from the old school, like, I've told these people this situation, like, you've got to go along with it. I think there's a fear of not getting what we want or getting in trouble for what we did. And lying, again, is that way of us trying to manipulate reality to conform to our own expectations. But what is it about lying where there is this self, there is this me that I feel like I have to protect? Again, this idea that there's self and other, there's a me and a them. And in what way is the lie trying to protect me? Number 5, traditionally, is about abusing intoxicants. Anything that intoxicates the mind, in terms of drugs, again, traditionally, usually drugs. Reverend Master Jiyu expanded that by translating it as selling the wine of delusion. First, on drugs specifically, if we want to find the truth, why would we partake of something that causes us to see unclearly? And intoxicants, maybe themselves, you could think, well, what's the big deal? But usually we wind up breaking other precepts when we're intoxicated. So our judgment is impaired, and it's a doorway really to doing harm, or can be. With regard to selling the wine of delusion, the example that I could think of, it kind of has lying involved, but it's an unintentional lie. Has at least been my experience of it. When I was a layperson here at the monastery years, 7-10 years ago, I'm from Oregon, so in theory, as far as I know, we have a spider called a brown recluse up in Oregon. Well, when I was down here, there was this kind of big gnarly spider in my room, and I said it was a brown recluse, but not because I was trying to lie in this situation, but because I had convinced myself that that's what it was. And so I told the guest master that, and in the process of this and talking about it, I got one of the other guests worried about it, and was convinced that that's what it was. And eventually the guest master looked it up and called the local whoever and found out, well, California doesn't actually have brown recluses. And I'm certain now, or at least, as certain as possibly one could be, that it was probably not a brown recluse. I had just gotten it into my head that that's what it was. But this selling the wine of delusion, this kind of intoxicating energy that we can have, where we create a situation that stirs up fear, anxiety. Again, remember how I was talking about how the precepts have this web aspect. Well, this precept, in breaking this precept, it can lead to anger, killing. We could kill the spider. Well, it's poisonous, so we've got to kill it. So selling the wine of delusion, again, like coveting does for abusing sexuality, selling the wine of delusion is expanding on not just not abusing intoxicants, but about an attitude of mind and energy that we can bring to situations where if we're not careful, we can do a lot of harm. Number 6 is speaking against others. Obviously, this is gossip and slander. Are we trying to make ourselves feel better? Are we gossiping for entertainment or hatred? Because we don't like somebody. And I'm gonna go into number 7 because I think these two, number 6 and number 7, are interestingly tied to each other. Where the number 7 is being proud of yourself and devaluing others, and how often when we're speaking against others, there is a self-righteousness. There is and I'm better than this person, so I'm going to talk about this person, and highlight their faults. And I think, I imagine that this is probably, we just naturally do this as human beings. We're social creatures, and we have to take great care to watch out for how we reaffirm our own sense of self at the expense of somebody else. How, by devaluing someone else, am I trying to, even if I'm not talking to anyone, in my own mind, how am I trying to make myself feel better, more competent, whatever, by devaluing someone else? The koan of inadequacy and pride are often said to be the two sides of the same coin, and pride in making myself feel better by devaluing someone is often just trying to cover up our own sense of inadequacy. And on the flip side, if we suffer from inadequacy, we can indulge in feelings of pride and speaking against others, where, well, at least I'm not that bad. At least I'm not that bad. Number 8, being mean and giving either dharma or wealth. Obviously, so being mean and giving wealth is going to be material wealth. Always we want to be skillful. We can't just give everything away. You have to keep something for yourself. No one's expecting us to give up all our material goods and go and, just give it to your neighbor or whatever. We have to be able to take care of ourselves. But how can we find skillful and compassionate ways to help each other? My story for this is once with Reverend Master Chose, who died a couple years ago. he and I were at a supermarket, and there was a homeless person or someone on the corner with a sign, asking for food or for help. And I said to him, I'm happy to give them food or whatever, but I just don't feel comfortable giving them money because, well, I don't know. Are they just going to go buy alcohol or with it or whatever, which I think is a very typical idea that we can have when we're, thinking about giving money to someone on the street. And he gave me this great answer. He says, that person's an adult. It's not your business what they're going to do with it. Like, either, you can be generous and give them $5 or whatever. And if they want to go buy alcohol with it, fine. Like, let them go buy alcohol with it. They're an adult. You just be generous. Don't worry about them. Like, that's their training. You just be generous. If you have a generous thought, be generous. And to me, that has always stood out as the best example of being stingy, because here, in a way, I wanted to be generous, but I had this stingy thought about what I thought the person was going to do, should do, or shouldn't do. And he was absolutely right. Like, at the end of the day, my job is just to be generous if I want to be generous. And that person, whatever they want to do with that, money or food or whatever is being offered to them, that's their training, that's their business. And I don't have to impose my ideas upon them. So I hope that makes some kind of sense in terms of wealth. And don't be stingy with Dharma is not being uncompassionate with our time and our understanding. Am I saying that right? We want to be compassionate with our time and our training. And sometimes we may feel like we don't know anything, but actually you do know something. In our hearts, we do know how to do this practice, whether we're Buddhists or not. And even offering someone a still moment of kindness and compassion, that is offering the Dharma. And how often during the day do we want to stop and take the time to be kind and still with even a complete stranger, someone we're just standing in line with. And yet, because of our own busyness, we blow past that opportunity. So even on a level where we think, well, I don't know the Dharma, actually, in a way, you do. And our time and our loving care, that is not being stingy, when we can make that offering of stillness to people. Number 9, indulging anger. Now this is often written as do not be angry, but actually, can we really help being angry? I think angry thoughts just come up. We don't really have any control over that, but we do have control over whether we indulge that or not. And anger, like intoxicants, is a real door for breaking the other precepts, because it's through anger that we really do a lot of harm and lead into the other precepts. Defaming the 3 treasures, the last one, as Rev. Master Oswin describes it, do not cause doubt to arise in others, and we don't want to wallow in our own doubt. And something that I was reflecting on is not bringing the teachings down to my level, but endeavoring to step up to the teaching, Does that make sense? We want to, we don't have to understand everything, but we can endeavor to have faith, to step up to what the Dharma is trying to inspire in us, to inspire us to do, and not to cut that short, not to try and bring it down. Well, they can't really mean that, or it can't really mean that, or I can't really do that, so I'm just going to be here. But trying to just step out of our comfort zone.